When a man disappears during a period of no contact, it can feel like the silence speaks louder than words. But what many don't realize is that this very silence often begins to stir something deep within him, emotional curiosity. This is one of the biggest reasons why men tend to return after no contact. It's not always about love right away or even regret. Sometimes it starts with a simple but powerful question in his mind: what is she up to? That question begins to snowball into an internal dialogue that pulls him back in ways he didn't expect. When the communication stops, the patterns that once gave him comfort, seeing your name pop up, hearing your voice, receiving your support, are suddenly gone. This absence creates a vacuum. Whether the relationship was long-term, casual, or something in between, we are wired to notice what's missing. And when someone you once connected with goes quiet, it leaves an echo. At first, he might enjoy the space. He may think he's finally free to explore his independence or focus on other things. But as days turn into weeks, that peace often turns into a nagging curiosity. He might begin to wonder if you've moved on, if you're happy without him, or if you even think about him at all. These thoughts can start to chip away at his initial confidence, a human nature to want to feel significant in someone's life, and your silence challenges that. It says, I'm not chasing, I'm not begging, I'm focusing on me, and that shift in energy is powerful. Emotional curiosity thrives in this space where he no longer has access to your emotions, your thoughts, or your daily life. Without updates, without your presence, his imagination fills in the gaps. He might scroll through your social media, check old messages, or replay memories in his head. This isn't necessarily about being in love, it's about wondering how someone who was once close to him could suddenly seem like a stranger. That transition is jarring. The emotional connection, even if buried, doesn't just disappear overnight. It lingers, and the lack of closure or continued contact often causes him to seek answers, even if he's not fully aware of it at first. Sometimes, emotional curiosity also stems from unresolved feelings. Maybe there were things left unsaid, or maybe he expected you to chase him and you didn't. That alone can stir up even more curiosity. Why isn't she reaching out? Has she really moved on? He begins to question not only your feelings but his own decisions. What once seemed like a confident choice to walk away or stay silent suddenly feels uncertain. That uncertainty fuels his curiosity. It becomes a loop in his mind. What if I was wrong? What is she thinking? What if she's with someone else? The most interesting part of emotional curiosity is that it often catches men off guard. They may believe they've shut the door and moved forward, but emotional bonds don't always follow logic. They're triggered by memory, nostalgia, loneliness, and the sudden realization that someone who used to care now seems emotionally unavailable. That shift is magnetic. It creates an urge to re-engage, even if it's just to test the waters or get a glimpse of how you're feeling now. Emotional curiosity is a powerful motivator. It may not always lead to reconciliation, but it often explains why a man reaches back out after weeks or months of silence. It's not always about wanting to start over, it's about wanting to know if he still holds a place in your world. And that need to know can be the first step in bringing him back into your life, even if just for a moment. One of the most powerful emotional triggers that can pull a man back after no contact is the fear of losing you for good. This fear doesn't always surface immediately, it tends to build slowly over time, especially when he begins to realize that your silence isn't temporary, that you're truly moving on with your life. At first, he may have felt confident in his decision or believed that you'd reach out eventually, but as the days pass and you remain quiet, a shift begins to happen. That silence, once comforting or empowering, starts to feel like a threat to his ego, his emotions, and even his identity. When a man feels like he's losing his place in your life, it shakes the foundation of how he saw the relationship. You see, many men, whether they admit it or not, often assume there will be a space reserved for them in your heart. They may take your presence for granted, thinking that you'll always be there, always care, or always come back. But when you choose silence, when you no longer initiate contact or show signs of emotional attachment, he's forced to confront a hard truth: he might actually lose you forever. This realization can hit in the most unexpected ways. Maybe he sees a post of you smiling, traveling, or simply glowing in your own energy. Maybe mutual friends mention how well you're doing without him. Maybe he wakes up one morning and instinctively reaches for his phone only to remember that you haven't messaged him in weeks. All of these moments serve as quiet reminders that time is passing and you're not waiting. The fear of losing you becomes more than just an emotional ache. It turns into a sense of urgency. He starts to think about the possibility of someone else stepping into the space he once occupied. The thought of another man making you laugh, comforting you, or being the one you lean on is often what truly sparks panic. Men don't always process emotions immediately after a breakup. Instead, they distract themselves, keep busy, or pretend they're unaffected. But no contact gives them time to sit with themselves, to reflect without your influence, and that's when the fear sets in. There's also a sense of finality that comes with your absence. When someone you used to talk to every day suddenly disappears, it makes you realize how easy it is to become a memory in someone else's story. That can be terrifying for someone who once felt important in your life. It's no longer about pride or even logic, it becomes emotional survival. He doesn't want to be forgotten. He doesn't want to be replaced. And he certainly doesn't want to see you thriving without him while he's still figuring himself out. This fear can make him question everything. Did he make the right choice walking away? Did he undervalue what you brought to his life? Was he too quick to assume you'd always be there? The fear of losing you forces him to reflect not just on the relationship, but on himself, his actions, his mistakes, his regrets. And in that space of fear and reflection, the desire to reconnect often grows stronger. What's important to understand is that this fear doesn't necessarily mean he's ready to return with commitment or change. Sometimes it's simply the fear of being left behind. But in other cases, it opens the door to genuine realization. He sees your worth more clearly when you're no longer within reach. Your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was, and that silence forces him to see what he's truly afraid of: losing someone who mattered more than he admitted, even to himself. When a man returns after a period of no contact, it's not always because of love or a desire to fix what was broken. Sometimes the motivation is deeply rooted in ego and the need for validation. This isn't always easy to spot, especially when he comes back with sweet words, familiar charm, or a sudden surge of attention. But if you look closely, the real reason behind his return could be tied more to how he feels about himself than how he feels about you. The male ego, just like anyone's, can be fragile, especially when it's used to being fed by attention, affection, and emotional support. If he was once the center of your world, the one you texted often, praised, or made a priority, then your absence becomes a blow to that part of him. When you stop reaching out, stop checking in, or seem unbothered by the silence, it sends a message he didn't expect. He's not in control anymore. And that lack of control can bruise the ego more than he's willing to admit. In many cases, a man expects that you'll chase him, that you'll be the one trying to fix things or bridge the gap. It becomes a silent assumption. So when you go quiet and stick to no contact, it throws him off balance. That silence doesn't just make him miss you, it makes him question his own importance in your life. And that's where the craving for validation begins. He may not come back because he's ready to commit or even because he misses the relationship. He may come back simply to find out, do I still have power over her emotions? This desire for validation is deeply tied to self-worth. If he feels ignored or rejected by your silence, he may start to second-guess his attractiveness, his charm, or the emotional hold he once believed he had on you. By reaching out, whether with a casual message, a compliment, or even an apology, he's often fishing for a reaction. If you respond warmly or show that you've been thinking of him, it soothes his ego. It tells him he still matters, even after everything. Sometimes this type of return is more about winning than reconnecting. He may want to be the one who has the last word, the one who decides how things end, or the one who feels like he's in control of the narrative again. It's not uncommon for a man to come back, receive the emotional reaction he was looking for, and then disappear again. Why? Because once he feels validated, once he knows you still care, his need is satisfied and the motivation to stay fades away. That's why it's so important to pay attention to his actions, not just his words. Is he consistent? Is he showing genuine remorse or making effort to rebuild trust? Or is he simply trying to see if you'll drop everything the moment he returns? Ego-driven behavior often lacks depth. It's impulsive, inconsistent, and more focused on short-term satisfaction than long-term connection. But to be clear, this doesn't always come from a place of malice. Sometimes people, men included, don't even realize that their actions are driven by ego. They just know they don't like how it feels to be ignored, forgotten, or seemingly replaced. They come back because they want to feel important again, to be reminded that they still hold a place in your heart. That feeling can be intoxicating. Understanding this dynamic gives you the clarity to respond with strength. When you realize that someone's return might be more about their ego than their love, you can protect your peace and set boundaries. You deserve someone who comes back not just to feel better about themselves, but because they truly value you and are ready to show up differently. One of the less obvious but very real reasons why men often return after no contact is delayed emotional processing. While it may seem like he moved on quickly or didn't care much after the breakup, the truth is that many men deal with emotional pain in a very different way. Instead of confronting their feelings head-on, they often suppress them, distract themselves, or bury them under routines, social life, or even dating other people. This isn't because they don't feel anything, it's because they don't always know how to process those emotions right away. Right after a breakup, women are more likely to face the pain, cry it out, talk with friends, reflect on what went wrong, and begin the healing process almost immediately. Men, on the other hand, often go into a kind of emotional shutdown. At first, he might seem unaffected. He might act cold, distant, or even relieved. You might think he's moved on and is already living his best life. But that's usually just the surface. What's happening underneath is a delay, a pause, an emotional acknowledgement that comes back to hit later when he least expects it. This delay can stretch out over weeks or even months. During that time, he might convince himself that the breakup was for the best, that he's fine on his own, or that there are better options out there. He might go out more, distract himself with work or hobbies, or surround himself with people to keep from feeling lonely. But eventually, when the noise quiets down and life returns to its normal rhythm, that emotional void starts to make itself known. He starts remembering little things, your laugh, your support, the way you made him feel seen and understood. And because he never processed those emotions properly in the beginning, they now rush in like a delayed wave. This can be overwhelming and confusing for him. Suddenly, he's thinking about you constantly, wondering how you are, what you're doing, and why he feels so empty without you. That's often the moment he decides to reach out, not because he's just now realizing he misses you, but because he's finally allowing himself to feel it. The problem with delayed emotional processing is that it creates a huge gap in timing. You might already be well into your healing journey, starting to move on, or not even enjoying your peace. Meanwhile, he's just beginning to feel the things you felt weeks ago. This mismatch can make it difficult to reconnect, especially if he expects you to be in the same emotional space as he is. His return might come in the form of a casual text, a late night message, or even a heartfelt apology. But it's important to understand where it's coming from. He's not just reaching out because he misses you, he's reaching out because the emotions he avoided are finally demanding his attention. He may genuinely regret his actions, or he may simply be overwhelmed by the realization of what he lost. This kind of emotional delay doesn't make his feelings any less real, but it does mean that his timing may not align with yours. He's processing grief, regret, longing, and even confusion all at once, which can make him appear unstable or inconsistent. One day he might want you back, and the next he might pull away again because the emotions are too much for him to handle. Understanding delayed emotional processing helps you see that silence after a breakup doesn't always mean indifference. Sometimes it's just part of how people, especially men, cope. When he returns, it's not always a calculated decision. Often it's the result of finally feeling the weight of everything he tried to avoid. Whether you let him back in or not is your choice. But knowing the reason behind his timing can give you the clarity you need to respond with confidence. When a man comes back after no contact, one of the more subtle yet common reasons is that he's testing the waters. He may not come out and say it directly, but his actions like sending a casual message, reacting to your story, or dropping a "hey, how have you been?" are often quiet attempts to see where he stands with you. This behavior is about gauging your emotional state, your openness to communication, and whether there's still a doorway open for him to walk through without fully committing to stepping in. Testing the waters usually happens when he's unsure. He might not be ready for a full-blown reconciliation, and he may not even know exactly what he wants. But something within him is pulling him back toward you. And before he makes any bold moves, he wants to know if it's safe to reach out. This is his way of protecting his ego, avoiding rejection, and figuring out if you're still emotionally available. These types of re-entries are often low risk for him. Instead of a deep, heartfelt conversation or a grand romantic gesture, he chooses a light, nonchalant approach. He might bring up a memory the two of you shared, ask about something random, or even pretend he's just checking in as a friend. But make no mistake, his curiosity isn't just friendly. It's loaded with intention. He's trying to read your tone, your reaction, your openness. Are you cold? Warm? Indifferent? Each of these responses tells him something about where he stands in your world. Men who test the waters often do so because they're unsure about your feelings. Your silence during no contact may have surprised him. Maybe he expected you to reach out, to fight for the connection, or to miss him visibly. When that didn't happen, it may have created doubt. So instead of diving back in emotionally vulnerable, he dips a toe in first. He wants to see if the water is warm before he swims. There's also a level of strategy involved. He may be trying to see if he still has emotional power over you. If a small message from him gets you to respond quickly, open up, or show signs of attachment, it gives him a sense of reassurance. It tells him he still has a place in your life, even if he hasn't earned that place back yet. This reassurance can boost his ego or help him decide if he actually wants to pursue something again. On the flip side, testing the waters can also be a sign of emotional confusion. He might miss you but be scared to face the past. He might feel lonely but unsure if he truly wants a relationship. So instead of being clear with his intentions, he plays it safe. This can be frustrating for you, especially seeking clarity and closure. His mixed signals may feel like emotional whiplash because he's not fully in, but he's not fully out either. When a man is testing the waters, the best thing you can do is stay grounded. Pay attention not just to his words, but to his consistency and actions. Is he showing real interest, making effort, and respecting your space? Or is he poking at your emotions just to see if you'll bite? Your response matters. If you're still healing or unsure, you don't owe him immediate access to your heart. You have every right to protect your peace. In the end, testing the waters isn't necessarily a bad sign. It could be the beginning of honest reconnection. But it's up to him to move past the shallow end and show he's willing to swim deeper. Until then, you have every right to wait, observe, and choose what's best for you. Sometimes, after a period of no contact, A man returns not out of curiosity, ego, or uncertainty, but because he has experienced genuine regret and deep realization. Unlike the more surface level reasons that might bring someone back temporarily, this type of return is often rooted in true emotional reflection. It usually comes after he's had enough time and space to look at the relationship for what it was and what he lost. Genuine regret doesn't show up instantly. In many cases, it only surfaces after the distractions fade, the initial relief wears off, and the reality of your absence starts to hit hard. When the connection was meaningful, your absence leaves a noticeable void. And while he might try to fill that space with other people, routines, or distractions, nothing quite replaces the emotional bond he had with you. It's in that quiet space when he's finally alone with his thoughts that the truth begins to rise to the surface. He starts to remember things differently. The arguments don't seem as serious. The moments of love and laughter come back stronger. The times you stood by him, supported him, believed in him, they echo louder than the times you disagreed. In hindsight, he begins to see the ways he may have taken you for granted, misunderstood your intentions, or failed to meet you where you needed him. These aren't just fleeting thoughts, they become emotional realizations that sit heavy on his heart. This kind of regret isn't about missing the idea of you. It's about missing you, the real person who was there through thick and thin. He may begin to see how his own actions or lack of action led to the breakdown of something valuable. And unlike ego-driven returns, this time there's often humility in his approach. He may not come back with flashy words or dramatic gestures. Instead, he comes back more quietly, more sincerely, with a desire not just to reconnect, but to make things right. Realization also brings clarity. It allows him to see the relationship through a more mature lens. Maybe at the time, he didn't know how to express his emotions or handle conflict. Maybe he thought he had more time or that you'd always be there, but now he knows better. Realization is the point where he stops blaming you or external circumstances and starts taking accountability. He begins to understand the weight of his choices and the impact they had not just on you, but on his own growth. This kind of return can be confusing for you, especially if you've spent weeks or months healing. You may wonder if his regret is real or temporary, but the key signs are in his consistency, vulnerability, and willingness to take responsibility. He doesn't just say he's sorry, he shows it through changed behavior, open conversations, and a deeper effort to understand and support you. It's important to remember that genuine regret isn't about guilt-tripping or pressuring you into giving him another chance. It's about owning what went wrong and hoping, honestly, for a second chance, knowing he may not get one. He's not coming back because it's convenient. He's coming back because he knows now what he didn't before. You are someone worth fighting for, someone who brought real value into his life. Whether or not you choose to let him back in is entirely your choice. But knowing that his return is rooted in genuine realization and not manipulation gives you a clearer perspective. People do grow. People do change, sometimes not fast enough, but sometimes just in time. And when someone returns with a heart full of sincerity and a mind full of clarity, it speaks volumes about the journey they've taken without you.